Today, I'm going to prototype my very first website in Figma with zero UI UX experience. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Brian and I'm a graphic designer. In my last video, I designed my very first website homepage in Figma. It's an arts and culture gallery called Sinosphere Archive, which focuses on educating about East Asian art and culture. After finishing the interface, I honestly thought the hard part was over. Turns out, designing a website and making it interactive are two completely different things. Because the moment I started prototyping, all the problems I didn't see before suddenly became obvious. And for the first time, I realized that good UI isn't judged by how it looks. It is also judged by how it works. So in this video, I'll be designing the inner pages of the website and turning the wireframe into an interactive prototype. This is part 2 to my I tried learning Figma for the first time video. So if you haven't watched that, please give it a watch first to give more context for this video. Before I designed another single page, I realized something important. A beautiful homepage doesn't mean much if the rest of the website is confusing. At first, I thought I could just design each page one by one and just figure it out along the way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't know how people were actually going to navigate the website. So before opening Figma again, I had to make a plan. So that's when I created my sitemap. Instead of jumping straight into designing, the sitemap helped me map out every single page the website would need and how they were all connected. Rather than treating every single page as a separate design, I could finally start seeing the website as one complete experience. For my website, I wanted users to easily explore East Asian art, fashion, and history, while also having access to educational articles and references in one place. One idea I had from the beginning was to allow visitors to browse artifacts by country. So whether someone was interested in Chinese, Japanese, or Korean history, they could filter through the collection without having to scroll through everything. That became one of the main ideas behind my user experience. But knowing what pages existed was only half of the challenge. The next question became, how does someone actually move through them? That's where user flow came in. Instead of focusing on the pages themselves, the flowchart helped me visualize the journey someone would take through the website. For example, someone would click into the art section, click on an artwork, and then read more about its history. Thinking through those interactions before designing saved me from making pages that look good individually, but they didn't actually connect together. With the planning finally complete, it was time to move on to sketching. Before I execute any design, I always start with sketching, as this is where the thinking actually happens. Now that I had my sitemap and user flow, the challenge wasn't just designing another page. It was making sure every page worked together as one complete experience. I had to think about questions I never really considered before. Where would users naturally look first? Would the navigation actually make sense without me explaining it? These rough sketches became my way of answering those questions, before spending hours designing everything in Figma. The hardest part was imagining interactions that didn't even exist yet. Things like drop-down menus, hover effects, all had to be imagined before I even actually made them. Looking back, this was probably where the project really started feeling like UI design instead of just graphic design. With the planning finished, it was finally time to bring the sketch to life in Figma. I started with the art page, creating categories that users would click to explore different art mediums. While working, I constantly used grids to keep the spacing balanced. Then added the search bar, drop-down menus, and the image gallery where all the artworks would be displayed. As the page slowly came together, it was the first time the project actually felt like a real website instead of just a random collection of ideas. For the artwork itself, I mainly use images from the Met Museum, along with details beneath each piece to make the gallery feel more authentic. I also chose this Japanese street scene as the banner image because its vibrant colors immediately added contrast and made the page feel more alive. After the art page, I started to design the collections page, which is where the user would go to explore historical artifacts. I designed 3 categories: sculpture, vessels, and metalwork, and used the auto layout feature and grid view to make sure the square frames are evenly spaced. The bottom of the page has the title of Collection Highlights, which is an image gallery of different artifacts, where I added my favorite collections from the Met Museum and Google Arts and Culture, as I took a lot of inspiration from those websites for this project. Little by little, each element from the buttons to the images started to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. And for the first time, I could actually imagine how someone would use the website from beginning to the end. With the wireframe finish, it was finally time to connect everything together. This was my first time prototyping in Figma, and it was the most frustrating part of this project. Not because Figma was difficult, it was because every small decision had consequences. You mess up or forget one step, and the prototype would not function right. The buttons were the easiest to prototype, as I just had to link 3 different colors of that button, as I wanted to change color when the user hovers over or clicks it. But the problem was that I had to repeat it for every single button, so you can only imagine how tedious it was. The more complicated functions like drop-down menus seemed simple on the surface, but making them required making copies of buttons and components because I had to create different options for the drop-down. Having to link each button and change the prototype settings over and over again was a very repetitive process. I can't imagine how UX designers have to do this for every single button on a complete website, which seems extremely time-consuming. The most difficult part was the navigation bar, as I actually spent more than an hour working on it, adjusting the text and icons. Every time I changed the spacing, another section looked unbalanced, and having to create prototype links looked like a mess as I had so many connectors everywhere. And then there was auto layout. At first, I thought it would magically just fix everything for me. Instead, it somehow managed to make everything messier, and things that I spent so long trying to align gone out of balance, and frames kept resizing. It felt like I was fighting the software. Those weren't questions about aesthetics anymore. It was now about usability. And that's when I understood why designers say you should prototype early. Because a prototype isn't there to prove why your design works. It's to reveal why it doesn't. Just when I thought the website was finally finished, my lecturer pointed out something that I didn't even consider. There was nothing wrong with the layout, and it actually looked quite nice, but there was one problem. It didn't really give people a reason to choose this website over any other museum website. When I compared it to other websites like the Met or Victoria Albert Museum, I realized they already offered a very similar experience. If my website were real, it simply wouldn't stand out because there was no unique selling point. Honestly, it was difficult to hear as I thought I was finally done. But after thinking about it for a while, I realized the feedback was completely fair. So I asked myself one question: what would make someone come back to this website? That's when I came up with the idea of adding a shop page. Instead of only browsing historical content, visitors could also purchase products inspired by East Asian art and culture. I designed circular product categories to make this page feel visually different from the rest of the website, while the main focus became this image carousel slider where users could browse featured products. At first, I really didn't want to design another page, but once I prototyped it, it actually made the website feel complete. After making all those refinements, everything finally started feeling connected. Instead of looking like individual pages, it actually felt like one complete experience. Seeing the transitions, interactions, and navigation working together made the whole project feel far more real than a collection of static mockups. And honestly, that was one of the most satisfying moments of this entire project. Not because it was perfect, but it was because I saw how much I improved. Back in part 1, I said UI design is less about decorating and more like solving problems. Prototyping finally showed me what those problems actually look like. Before this project, I mainly judged my designs based on how they looked. Now I found myself asking completely different questions, and those questions changed the way I approach design. This project made me think less like a graphic designer and more like someone designing an experience. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons learning Figma taught me so far. But compared to when I first started, I don't just understand Figma better, I understand design better. This project definitely wasn't perfect. There is still plenty of things that could be improved, but that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned so far. Progress doesn't come from getting everything right. It comes from seeing the mistakes you couldn't see before. If you've ever tried designing your first website or tried learning Figma, I'd love to know what challenged you the most. And if you enjoyed following my design journey, give this video a like and subscribe, as I have a lot more design projects to share in the future.